Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen for Pretty Pink Posh, and in today's video I have a very colorful project to share with you today. I'm going to be using the Layered Butterflies stencil, which is a 3-piece stencil. It has a layer for the body, the detail of the wings, and the main wings. I'm going to start off by doing some ink blending using the first layer of the stencil, which is the main portion. It's the open part of the wings for the butterfly. I'm working on a glass surface only because it's easier for me to glide my blending tool onto the stencil. And for this, I will be using distress inks. It has been a long time since I dug out my regular distress inks, and I forgot how absolutely vibrant and beautiful they are. For the colors that I will be using, I'm starting with Picked Raspberry, and honestly, when in doubt, go with the rainbow. So instead of red, I'm coming in with kind of a modified rainbow, which is why I brought in Picked Raspberry. Then I'm moving on to Dried Marigold, and I want to make sure to overlap these colors as I go, because that's really where the magic happens, is that overlap. Now this one is Squeeze Lemonade. And then I'll bring in Twisted Citron. Now, for all of my blending, I am using a blender brush. You can use whatever blending tool you prefer, but I did find it was a lot easier to blend with the distress inks using my blending brushes because I'm not getting that harsh line. Sometimes with distress inks, I don't know, I've struggled using them in the past for blending because I seem to get harsh lines, but it was just a lot easier to use a brush for this process. Now this color is Salvaged Patina, which that's absolutely magical between Twisted Citron. And then I have the Wilted Violet. So once I have all of this blended together, I'll just remove the magnets that were holding my stencil down and pull that stencil away. And we're going to reveal this magical rainbow background. And then we're going to bring in the second layer of the stencil, which is adding the details to the wings. I thought a tone-on-tone look would look really nice on this. And since I just ended with my purple, I'm going to start with my purple and just go over all of those areas. Now, I do have to admit that if I were to redo this, I probably would have come in with maybe a shade darker of ink, or even going over it with maybe a dark gray. And I say that because after I put this card off on the side and it sat for a while, I did notice that this second layer of color kind of faded away. So I didn't see the detail as much as I initially did once all of the ink was dry. So once I have this layer done, I'll just remove that stencil, and I just rinse these off in the sink. Since these are distress inks and they are water reactive, they clean off really easy with water. And now I'm bringing in this third layer of the stencil, which is adding the body and the antenna piece to the butterflies. For this, I used a regular dye ink out of my collection, and this is just a really, really dark gray, and I want to make sure to go over those areas pretty heavily because I want to cover up the lines of the wings underneath. I didn't want that to show. So here I finished that off, and isn't that just gorgeous? I just love that so much. Now that I have that background done, I wanted to break it up a little bit. I could definitely have just added a sentiment right in the center, but I wanted to try something a little different, and I may have gotten a little carried away with my rainbow. So what I did is I went through my scrap cardstock and I trimmed out little slivers of cardstock in similar colors to what I used on my background. And they vary in size. Some are super skinny, some are a little thicker. Here I'm going to use my grid mat to help me line that up straight across the front of my card, just going in that rainbow order. And I'm using a tape runner to just add adhesive to the back of those. I like to work on a slick surface when I'm adding that adhesive because then I don't have to work so hard to clean my black mat. It's really easy to rub the adhesive off of that slick surface. Once I have all of those attached, I'm just going to flip this over and trim off any excess that's hanging on the side. Then I'm going to work on a sentiment. So really, this card could work for anything. It could be for birthday. I mean, it's so bright and cheerful. You could have any type of occasion for it. I went with this Welcome Spring sentiment that's off of the Easter Signs stamp set. So I have a piece of black cardstock here that I prepped with an anti-static powder tool. I am inking up my stamp in a white pigment ink. I'll stamp that down gently because pigment ink, you don't want to squish your letters and make it distorted. And then I'm going to sprinkle on some white embossing powder and melt that with my heat tool. This is my favorite way of doing white heat embossing on black cardstock. Then I'll use my mini trimmer and just trim this down into a little rectangle. And to finish my card, I had trimmed my butterfly panel down to about 3 3/4 by 5 inches. And I'm adding a piece of double-sided foam to the back. This is going to add dimension to the front of my card. So I'll just remove the backing of that adhesive and add this to a white card panel that I have cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So I have a little bit of breakup on my background by having that white border. And then I added black foam squares to the back of my sentiment and added that to the front. So I think that black sentiment really helped kind of break up that background as well, since I have so much rainbow going on here. I hope you enjoyed today's colorful rainbow project. Thanks so much for joining.